Hello, everyone, and thanks again for joining us at the 2024 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, the Competitive Advantage presentations hosted by the Craft Analytics Group. I couldn't be more excited to bring on our next presentation here. My name is Grant Anhorn. I'm a first-year MBA student here at MIT Sloan. This next presentation will be titled Harnessing Machine Learning to Identify Top Sponsor Leads. Couldn't be more thankful for Ticketmaster in sponsoring this panel. And with that, I would love to welcome Tiffany Kraus, the Senior Manager of Fan Data Science at the NFL, up on stage. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Like Grant said, my name is Tiffany Kraus, and I'm really excited to share with you today a little bit about a project we've been working on that, like the title implies, harnesses machine learning to identify top sponsor leads. So before I dive into the project, I thought it'd be good just to level set with the NFL's data and analytics organization as a whole. So about 3 years ago, the league made a decision to bring all of the data and analytics functions under one organization. So we support a variety of different stakeholders and functions, including player health and safety, football ops, viewership, metrics, and then, of course, we've got a large team of data engineers and a data management team that really sets up and supports all that infrastructure. But the bucket of, or the stakeholder that we support with this project is really the 32 clubs. And you might be asking yourself, well, why does the league support the clubs? Don't clubs have their own analytics function? And the short answer is yes, they do. But there's a lot of scale and economies of scale that can be leveraged by the league offering either, data. So we have like a similar initiative that the previous speaker was talking about, where we share fans back and forth with the clubs. Or it might be a third-party data append, or a model or an analytics capability. So there's a lot of benefits there and as far as scaling out the work goes. And so like I said, this project really is to support the clubs in that focus, and it's supporting their main goals and objectives, which really come down to local revenue and then driving and deepening that fandom. And so I'll talk a little bit about how this project really ties into, or what we hope will tie into increasing those local sponsorships. But before I jump to the next slide, just a real quick call out there. You'll see two people, Chan and Yo. So just a quick thank you to the team that really has been the hands-on keyboard in building this model. Okay, so like I said, the whole point of this project is really to drive local sponsorship revenue. And what really spurred this is we've always had access to a B2B data set tied to the fans. But as with any data set, it can be very overwhelming with where to start. And so what we wanted to really do is think about how we can leverage that a little bit better. And the solution we came up with was building a model to help identify those top sponsor leads. So instead of sales teams having to weed through thousands of potential leads, if we can prioritize them and save them time, that's a huge benefit at the end of the day. So getting into the data collection a little bit here and the implementation. So like I said, the whole thing really starts with this B2B data set we have. And something I'll note is that the model that we're building is it scores businesses, but the B2B level is really at the fan level. Now, I think there's some advantages to that in marrying that business data with that fan level. And that's based on feedback. We've been collaborating with a couple of clubs and then others in the league as we've been developing this model. And that's something they really said would be valuable, is to score the businesses first and then tie it into the fans, which I'll get to in a second here. But the other data that we're bringing in, like I said, the fan data, The stadium location, so proximity tends to be very important that we've noticed, and then the local sponsorship lists. But so how do we acquire the B2B data? So you'll see that visualization on the bottom. So what happens is we send a list of our fans to a third-party data provider. They see who in their database matches our fan list, and then they append that business data. So it might be things like, the business where the person works, or the title of the person, that company's revenue, that company's location, which really allows us to have a more complete picture of who this fan is. And then we also get that business data as well. So getting into the model a little bit more here. So for those of you who are not super familiar with machine learning, there's unsupervised learning, and then there's supervised. And supervised learning really needs some sort of truth label or something that indicates what you're trying to predict so that it can learn patterns and behaviors, essentially. And so while the B2B data does not have the labels of who's a current sponsor, we do collect that information through a separate means. So we've got the club business development side collects that information from clubs as to who their local sponsors are. So we use a combination of fuzzy matching and then some manual checks as well to really marry the two data sets so that we can get those truth labels and have that model learn those patterns. And at the end of the day, you can see there we've got a match rate of just a little bit over 50%. And not everything matches at the end of the day because there's some maybe smaller, more local organizations that are not in that B2B data set. And then one thing I'll point out too, we're able to do the manual matches because it doesn't necessarily have to be real time. So we are lucky to have that flexibility in just checking those labels as well. So for feature engineering, so we've got the labels and then some of the features we want to build in. Like I said, we're really marrying that fan data with that business data. So on the business data side, number of decision makers that might be there, number of C-suite execs, company's time in the business, revenue is a big indicator. And then all the other fan information, again, we roll up to a business level. So whether it be, the number of ticket purchasers, number of suite purchasers, number of corporate buyers, things like that. And then for the demographic data, we might roll it up to like average age or average income group, things like that. And then stadium location and the company headquarters tends to also play a big role in this. And so through the B2B data set, we have access to not only the overall company headquarters, but also any local offices as well. So getting into the model development a little bit, the model that seems to come out on top, for us at least, is gradient boosted trees, so a type of decision tree. Random forest is a close second, but we've generally just gotten better performance out of a gradient boosted tree model. And one of the biggest challenges we've faced is with class imbalance. So I think it's less than 1% of the training data set are actual sponsors, which does pose a pretty big challenge. But we do use resampling, and then we also employ cross-validation to really make sure that we're building the most robust model possible. And then on the model evaluation side, so we're still ironing some things out, and we haven't launched the model yet. But we've been pretty excited about the performance we've been seeing so far. And so we're really putting more emphasis on the Breyer score, so the closer to 0, the better, and then also the ROC AUC score, since we're outputting a probabilistic score, so 0 to 1 versus like an actual 0 or 1 label. So that's why we put more emphasis on the Breyer score and some of those metrics, and less on the F1 where we have to define a specific cutoff. And then the top features that come out influencing the sponsorship model. So again, I just go back to, I think this is very different because we're not just purchasing a business lead list, right? We're really bringing in the fan component as well. And I think that shows up on a lot of the top features we see. So for instance, ticketing. So number of suite buyers shows up, which in talking to clubs makes a lot of sense because a lot of times that might be, part of a sponsorship or something of that nature where they're also purchasing a suite. Number of ticket buyers is also consistently shows up as a top feature. And then location. So proximity to the stadium, not only from the company headquarter, but then also, a more local entity as well. But the thing I'll say that really stuck out to me that I thought was interesting and really excited to see, and it's typically like a top 5 feature, and that is email engagement across clubs and leagues. So this really tells us that there's a lot of benefits to, again, bringing in that fan data with that business data because it's a warmer lead, right? So if we know that this fan works for company A and they're actively engaging with a club's emails or the league emails, we have a better chance of converting that company by going through that person as a sponsor. So I was really excited to see that, not only the ticketing customers are there, but then if you're also opening emails, that was really excited to see in the feature importance scale as well. Oops. There we go. So this is an example of the output that we plan on sharing out to all 32 clubs. So we'll list the company name, a lot of the features that went in there, but then I also just want to call out the industry there. So that's really important information as well that we're trying to figure out a good way to either build into the model or the output or something like that, because a lot of times the local sponsorships are really based on an industry category. And so there's, I think you can get a little bit creative as far as the exclusivity goes there, but that's a really big deal, especially if there's open industry categories to fill. And then in addition to sharing out the businesses, like I've been saying, I think the real benefit here is the fan data with the business data. And so in addition to the list of top businesses, we also plan on sharing out the fans tied to those businesses. So maybe that's the chief marketing officer or key decision makers at the companies that would have, the budget or the influence to be able to execute on a type of sponsorship like that. So in conclusion, like I said, what we really try to do is, help clubs optimize revenue. And so there's the ticketing side, but then we also feel like there's a lot of opportunity on the sponsorship side as well. And so we've really tried to leverage the existing data that we have with the fan data that we have to bring together this top prospect list and use machine learning to help prioritize those business leads. And so at the end of the day, like I said, we haven't launched this yet, but we're planning on launching it in the next couple months. And so we hope that it leads to a lot of time savings for club sales staff, and then also conversion as well, since, again, we're coming in with the warmer leads, since we already know that you're a fan of the club or the NFL in general. So we think that can be really impactful. But with that, I'll open it up to questions. Thank you.
Hi, Niall Williams, USTA. I was just wondering, what data are you using to find out what fans are employed at the potential sponsors you're looking for? And how are you determining who's a key decision maker? I'm wondering if that's like something you compiled, or is there some automatic process you're using for that?
So for the key decision maker, that's more subjective. So it's things like if you're a C-suite level person, for instance, things like that. So a little bit more subjective there. And then going back to your first question, and let me know if I answer this or not. So, sorry, can you actually repeat that first question?
So how are you determining, if these people are employed at these potential sponsors?
So that's through the third-party data provider. So we send them a list of the fans with PII, and then they match that up. So they know, where people potentially work, and then they send that information back to us.
Hi, I was wondering if you've heard different feedback from clubs across the various market sizes that you have across the league.
That's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily say it varies by market size, but there's other factors that might influence it. So like I mentioned, industry category, that's really important to a lot of clubs that have open industry categories to fill, and then less important to other clubs that maybe don't have that problem. So I would just say it really, all 32 are at different phases and have different, needs and things like that. So I would say it's not necessarily by market size, it's more other factors.
I was wondering if any of your underlying assumptions were whether or not they're existing sponsors of an NFL club, or are you finding potential brands that aren't existing sponsors through revenue and location, et cetera?
We are finding some newer sponsors in there for sure. Some of it is, like you said, kind of obvious, and we're making these matches and things like that. But luckily, the lists have been pretty robust, and so we're still finding little pockets and potential companies to leverage.
Tim Barber, Engage.OM, just over here.
Oh.
Perfect. One of the key criteria that you had here was looking at revenue, and certainly kind of one of the things that we see in the market is kind of revenue is a key factor, but actually there's things like revenue growth are actually kind of a better indicator in terms of whether someone's got the propensity to purchase. Are you going into that level of detail, or what's your plans around that?
Yeah, great question. So right now, that's not a part of the data we get, but in doing this exercise, we've really begun conversations about how to maybe enhance that data set that we're purchasing. And that's one of the things that has come up is, which companies are growing, which are shrinking. So that's definitely something we would like to incorporate in the future.
So knowing that sponsorship data, as you mentioned, is tied into premium seating and luxury suites, the threshold for revenue might not need to be as high, but have you guys thought about using the data as a second use case for premium seating potentials for teams?
Absolutely. Yep, that has come up in the feedback we've gotten from clubs and our internal partners as well. So that is something we're looking into.
All right, if there are no further questions, thank you so much, Tiffany. I really appreciate it.